Everybody, and welcome back to more political chatter. In this video, we will be talking about Doug Burgum, the North Dakota governor, and how he today has suspended his presidential campaign for the Republican nomination for president. And this came in a email to supporters, posted on social media, the typical withdrawal from presidential races. Doug Burgum is out. He had announced in June and early June of this year, and he is today, December 4th, 2 days before the next presidential debate, which he, was certainly not going to make. He today is announcing that he is out. Doug Burgum ran on a campaign, focused on three issues: energy, foreign policy, and something else. Let's see. I don't know. He said it somewhere. But he was definitely focused on more financial issues. Of course, he is the wealthy North Dakota governor. He sold some Microsoft something or other. He sold his business to Microsoft for $1 billion, back in the 90s or something. So he is very wealthy. And he was only, the only way he could run his campaign was from his own personal wealth. He obviously didn't have donors. As a guy who was polling at 0.6% today, he is definitely not someone who's a major candidate and would have gotten, all of these donors. So he ran this presidential campaign using his own personal funds, and that really is what allowed him to last this long, because he didn't find much success. As I said, he announced in June of this year. I mean, whatever. No one even expected him to run. It was a huge surprise when he did announce that he would run. It started at 0.2, whatever. He never even, his peak was at 0.9%, right? So he never even got above a percentage point. It's not like his withdrawal will even matter. This isn't like a Ron DeSantis guy who's polling at 13%, and his 13% being distributed among the other candidates might actually make a difference. It's not that. He is only at, he's below a percentage point right now. He's at 0.6%. It really doesn't matter. But it does need to be said how interestingly quickly this field of Republicans is what's the word? Starts with a C. Whatever, I'll just say condensing, is, condensing down into a few candidates. Looking at this time in 2020, we are about, right here, right before 2020. We had Julian Castro still in the race, Marianne Williamson, Cory Booker, John Delaney, Andrew Yang, Michael Bennet, Deval Patrick just got in, Michael Bloomberg was still in, of course, Bernie, Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, Biden, Tulsi Gabbard. All of these people were still in the race, along with the few Republicans. So we had so many candidates at this time in the race, and when you look at today, all we have are, right now, Trump, Ramaswamy, Hutchinson, Haley, DeSantis, Christie, Williamson, Dean Phillips, and Joe Biden. We only have a handful of candidates in the race, while at this time in 2020, we had no idea who the nominee would be. Biden was leading by a little bit, but I just looked at a poll from it was a couple days ago, but it was on this day 4 years ago, and in Iowa, Pete Buttigieg had a huge lead. So, Biden was leading nationally by a couple points, but people, were saying, but who knows what could happen after Iowa. Of course, we know now. Didn't really have much effect. But very interesting back in 2020, because we had all of these candidates, rising stars at this time, like Andrew Yang and Marianne Williamson, and Pete Buttigieg, of course, were all rising dramatically in the polls. And then we had new entries, like Mike Bloomberg with his billions of dollars that he could spend on this campaign of his own personal fortune. We had no idea who would end up as the nominee back in, this was 2019. But looking at 2024, First of all, we only have a handful of candidates. When you look at their polling, Trump is dominating among the Republicans, and Biden is dominating, of course, among the Democrats as the incumbent president. It's really not much competition on either side. Honestly, at this point, the Democratic primary might get a even more interesting than the Republican primary. Yes, the Democratic primary with the incumbent Biden running for re-election, because we have New Hampshire where Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson could both put up a very good fight and have an effect, going into other primary states. But we really do have a very good chance of Donald Trump and Joe Biden being the nominee. I mean, we're looking at, greater than 90% chances on either side. It would be very unlikely if Nikki Haley ends up as the nominee. And she's the next bet to Trump. Even though, well, I won't go into the Democratic primary, but Phillips and Williamson, Marianne Williamson polling much higher than Dean Phillips. She's probably the next bet to Biden among the candidates running right now. She's still far away. Whatever. This field of candidates in the Republican side is shrinking down so dramatically, like we haven't seen before. And yeah, it is, Doug Burgum withdrawing from the race is just another example of that. And, we see this right before the next presidential debate. And this really is the reason, the deeper reason, why there are so few candidates right now in the race. Looking back at 2020, the requirements for these Republican debates are so much more harsh than the Democrats back in 2020. I mean, at this time, 4 years ago, Cory Booker was still making debates. Marianne Williamson was still making debates. Julian Castro was making debates. All of these candidates, I mean, besides Deval Patrick, is the only one that I can't think of right now. And then, Gabbard was being, censored by CNN, but whatever. And all of these candidates, practically, were all making debates. If they were still making debates, they still had hope in their campaign because they could have a breakthrough moment in the next debate, right? Because the Democrats made it easy for candidates to get into debates. But these Republican debates, they are trying to condense this field down dramatically and quickly. They do not want a very large and divided field going into Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada. They clearly do not want that. The requirements for this next debate are 80,000 donors, but 6% in either 2 national polls or 1 national poll and 2 state polls. Or I think you can have, never mind, actually. But that 6% is certainly a feat for these other candidates. Obviously, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and Nikki Haley, the 3 that should get that, automatically, as right now they stand as the 3 major candidates in this race. But for people like Vivek Ramaswamy, who, rose from obscurity, when he announced his campaign, along with people like Chris Christie, Asa Hutchinson, Ryan Binkley, and then, for Doug Burgum and Tim Scott, the same thing went when they were still in the race. It would become increasingly harder. That 1% threshold for the first debate, that was easy to get through. I mean, Asa Hutchinson got over, Doug Burgum, of course, Tim Scott, all of these candidates, besides Ryan Binkley, got into that first debate. But looking at this 6% threshold, it has become so much harder to get into these debates, especially if you missed the one prior and people, have no idea who you are. Once you miss your first debate, it's almost like you're out of it for missing the rest because, you missing that debate, it's less donors, it's less support, and the support and donors thresholds will only rise for the next debate. So it really becomes hard to get into any more debates once you miss that third one. So with Doug Burgum Burgum, missing the third debate and now definitely missing this fourth one, his path to victory, his chance of a breakout moment drops to 0. So there's just simply no path to victory, especially if you're Doug Burgum, and you're at 0.6% nationwide, and really not much better in Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina or Nevada for that matter. It's like, where can you possibly have momentum? The Burgum momentum was over. We briefly saw it in New Hampshire where he was at like 5% once, but he has not been able to retain that. And this goes, as for the debates, this goes for these other candidates. I mean, Asa Hutchinson, Ryan Binkley. Asa hasn't been in the debate since the first one. Ryan Binkley has never made a debate. He's hoping for a good performance in Iowa. But as for Chris Christie, these candidates that if Chris Christie can't make this debate, he has, one more day? He needs a state poll in Iowa or somehow another national poll at 6%, which is unlikely, but he just did it with Trafalgar. That was released today. He has to really hope for something good, from a poll. But, I mean, if he can't make this one, it is very, very unlikely that he makes the next. Someone like Chris Christie, I could honestly see somehow pulling it off, but it really makes it extremely unlikely if he can't make this one. And, I mean, and then we see the end of the Chris Christie campaign, likely. I don't know if he would go on and wait until New Hampshire, like he has said. I could see him throwing his support behind Nikki Haley, someone who actually, I guess, has a little shot at winning this nomination against Trump. So thank you all for watching this video. Make sure you all subscribe if you enjoyed. I certainly did. I hope you did too. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all next time.